Hey everyone, Nils back here from Dinghy Studio. Yesterday we implemented a nice new twist to an existing website that we're maintaining for one of our very dear customers, and they were looking to upgrade their homepage animation. And while I was building it, I actually thought maybe there was a couple twists in there that I didn't know about, that this was possible that way. And I thought, sharing is caring, maybe somebody else is interested, So let's look at that thing right now. Maybe let's actually look at the existing one right now as it is. So when you get onto the homepage, this is a video element. The video just plays automatically. I really like that animation still, but they wanted to move away from the mountains and actually show more people, and I think that's a very smart move. So the new thing includes more people, as we can see, but let's play the animation from the beginning. So I'll hit reload, and we can watch what happens. So it opens the curtain, it overlays a gradient, it extends all the way, and then it has this slow crossfade of 4 different pieces of content on the stage, and it has this nice little arrow animation going on right down here. That's it. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, but I'm going to subdivide the video in a couple different pieces. So first of all, I wanted to give you an idea on how this is built, like the architecture. The HTML will just see how stuff is stacked on top of each other, so you get a sense of what's happening here. Then I wanted to look into this tiny arrow animation, because we had this in a mock-up, and I was actually a little bit worried of how I could build this in an easy way. And it turned out that it's just a couple of lines of keyframe animation. And I was positively surprised that I didn't have to jump through hoops to make this. And then I also want to specifically talk about the masking effect, like this curtain that opens up, because if you notice, it also has rounded corners that turn into pointy corners in the end of the animation. And there's a piece of knowledge about CSS that I didn't have before. So let's jump right in and look how it's, check out how it's built. So this site uses Remix, and that's a React framework. So we're looking at a bit of React code over here. So let's make this a little wider and not look at the animation all the time. So I'm showing you this because I actually think also here that stuff like this always looks a little bit more intimidating than it in fact is. So we have more or less 4 base layers for this entire stage. The most bottom one is the video that is repeating all the time. We set it to autoplay. For that to happen, you also have to mute it, because the browser will otherwise refuse to autoplay the video if it has sound enabled. This video doesn't even have sound in the file, but the browser doesn't know that, so we still have to provide the attribute. Plays inline is important for iOS, so it doesn't, go into full screen automatically. And then we set it to loop, because the video is intended that way. Then let's close this down. We'll look at the style in a second. Then we have the gradient fade, this blue to more of a turquoise gradient layer that is semi-transparent, that goes over the video, but also it's not there in the beginning. We see the video in plain color, and then it comes on. So this is just a div with the gradient on it, and this is I'm using Tailwind over here. That's of course not necessary, you can do that in any way you like, but if we hover in VS Code, we already see background image linear gradient. So it's a simple gradient from top left corner in a relatively specific degree to a color also with transparency in it. All right, and then we have this element, I called it hockey stick cutoff, like this thing down here, that overlays the video in a more organic way. And this little friend is, I considered CSS clip path and different things and whatnot, but honestly, in the end, I just inlined the SVG as it was. Like, it has exactly one path that is not even very long. So I just jammed it in there, to be honest with you. So that was very easy to work with because we can just apply CSS directly on the inline SVG element. And then the last thing is the content, which is this element in the middle over here. And so in this content element, we have a loop. So I wanted to make this stage reusable. And if we look into the CMS, we're using, as you might know, if you watched videos that I've recorded before, where we're using Sanity. And so in this homepage stage component, I wanted to make this reusable and thought, hey, it's not always going to be 4 pieces of content that crossfade in a loop. So I made this like a dynamic array where we can also just change the order of things. And in each of those, you can have a headline, you can have a text, and you can have an image if you like. And that's exactly what we see here. So because this is a stage, and I wanted to make sure that we only have one H1 in there and not 4, or how many elements might be in there. I'm just checking, hey, is this, are we on the first of the content elements? Then give it an H1. For all the other ones, give it an H2. If we have text, awesome, show it. If we have an image, amazing, also show that. And that's it. Like, that's the HTML structure for this entire stage, and I think that is actually relatively reasonable for something that looks pretty snazzy. Like, it opens this thing, and then it overlays the content, and it does this and that, and it has like this little arrow that scrolls you down to the next content and so on. So yeah, that's that. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about is the little arrow animation. So if we look at our little arrow, how it comes in here as soon as it fades in. So if we look at this closely, maybe we can actually zoom in a little bit. Yeah, we can zoom in a little bit. Let's look at this. So the arrow stops in the middle at full size, and then it goes down, but like it scales down at the bottom of the circle, and it scales up from the top of the circle. And I thought that was actually going to be tricky because I think it gives this like a little 3D vibe. Like, it's not 3D, of course, but it seems like the arrow is kind of, you know, circling around a sphere. And I thought that was going to be tricky, but it's actually not. So the only thing I did for that was to define a little keyframe animation. I gave it the incredibly creative name of appear loop because I'm horrible at naming stuff, but don't blame me. And it has, as you'd expect, like 3 stages. It starts and kind of moves the arrow. The arrow, if you don't apply the animation, is just in the center of the circle. That's it. So for the beginning of the animation, we just move it up and scale it down by all the way to 0, so it's gone. Then at 50%, we move it into the center and scale it back to its original size. And at the end of the animation, we just move it by 100%, which is the size of the arrow itself, and scale it down to 0. And it just works like that. Isn't that awesome? I think it's important that the scale comes after the translate. That is one thing to note. So, and then you just go in here, like, whoop, we have the button down here. This is the button, and it has the little SVG arrow inside of it. Like this thing, if you're not familiar with it, we have a sprite file in SVG. So this looks horrible, of course, but it's one SVG file that only has symbol definitions in it. So none of this will show, and it just contains like a whole bunch of individual SVG icons, and each of them, they just have an ID. And this is not even sorcery, like this is regular SVG as intended by the platform, and you can use this xlink href. So you tell it where the file is, and inside of that file, you give it the ID of the symbol that you're looking for, and it will grab it and just put it in here. And the whole point why we do that is that we just have to load these icons once. With one request, we can cache this file forever, and we can use all the icons basically for free without adding more code than necessary to our individual HTML pages. All right, and then we turn the button into this circle. So it's like a circle, and it has this blurry background and so on. And so we're saying like this is 52 pixels in a square, and it's rounded, and like I love CSS grid, so I gave it a grid and said place all the items in the center. Background is their primary dark color with 20% opacity, and blurring the backdrop, and I'm giving like a little bit of padding. And then for the animation, like this is the way in Tailwind to use a keyframe animation without defining the animation itself. Like what you can do is, so I'm in the theme extend keyframes. There's also theme extend animation, and then I can basically put this entire definition of the actual animation. So how long is it running? What's the ease? Will it loop infinitely or whatever? I can also predefine all that and just call it animate dash arrow button animation or whatever. But so since I'm just using it here, and I actually want to be able to fine tune all that stuff without going into the Tailwind config, I just put it here. And yeah, so this is the keyframe animation, my beautiful name appear loop. It's 1.7 seconds. Don't judge me. It's, I don't know, 1.5 looked weird and 2 was too long. So, and then there's the easing function in here, and it runs forever. And maybe for the easing function, just because not everybody knows that, and I actually also had a hard time figuring that out at the beginning. This is something that's super handy in browsers that I didn't use enough up till now. So as we can see, when we inspect the SVG in the DevTools and we look at the CSS panel, there's this tiny icon on the cubic Bezier, and you can just click that and fiddle around with how this looks, and then see like it actually updates how the animation runs. Like we can just make this super horrible, just like that. And like this visual way of defining the Bezier curves. I know there's online tools, you know, to do the same thing, but I really like that it's in context and you can just play with your animation as you see it right there. And then the only thing you have to do is to just copy this and put it in your animation. Super awesome. All right, so that's that. Moving on to the next topic, which is the masking effect of this animation. So this thing, right, like it zooms up like that, then it still has the corners, and then it extends all the way. So I don't know if you ever tried to transform a rectangle that has corner radius applied, border radius. Because what happens is, let's say you have a square and it has, you just say, you know, like a div, I don't know, 200 pixels wide, 300 pixels high or something like this. And then you go just, you know, border radius 20 pixels. Amazing. And then you use CSS transforms to change the way that this looks. So my initial idea was to just use scale on the element, and just, you know, we have the whole element and then we scale it down on the x-axis like this, so it just goes together. But what happens if you do that is that the border radius, it won't maintain its aspect ratio. So while you squish down the rectangle, the corner radius will get distorted as well, and then it will just look ugly. And then I went online and I found this super nice article. I'm going to put it in the description on CSS tricks. Rest in peace. There seems to be a motion by Chris to get CSS tricks back from DigitalOcean. Fingers crossed. Sorry, DigitalOcean, you just did a horrible job with the site. But there was an article that pointed out that clip path, CSS clip path, can actually also define corner radii, and I was completely blown away by this. So let's look at the keyframe animation right here. I call it curtain, and here's the clip path. All right, so let's step by step, not to get overexcited over here. So on the entire section that hosts our 4 layers, all the way back here, I added this. This is the only thing I added in Tailwind to get this entire effect over here, right? This whole curtain zooming out a little bit and then all the way and so on. All this is 4 keyframes and this line to apply the animation. And I think that's just completely super stunning. I don't know, like I expected to install green sock animation library or whatever, do some sort of sorcery to get this done, but I didn't have to, and that's why I'm actually making this video. So with clip path, you can say I want to inset the clipping path. So we're right, like now the entire section element, like with everything in it, is not clipped at all. And at the beginning of the animation, it's completely clipped, and then we kind of open this clip path to show the whole layer. And the way that this works is at 0% of the animation, we define a clip path on the entire layer that we, like with the inset keyword, we say we want to, like this is the entire layer, and now we're insetting the clip path somewhere inside of this layer. And these 2 values allow you to define the offset from top and bottom, and the second value from left and right. And thankfully, because CSS is amazing as always, we can also mix relative percentage values with absolute ones. And I wanted to do that because you never know the aspect ratio of the device that is viewing your website, and I wanted for the middle stage of this animation, right, when the square is like this, I always wanted it to maintain the same distance from its element, no matter the aspect ratio. So if we do like a more of a mobile thing right here and reload this thing, then you can see like it also maintains the same distance all the way to the stage, even if the aspect ratio is very different. Okay, but the important bit is I'm telling it at the beginning, so 6 rem from top and bottom, and then 50% from each side. And that is exactly this curtain effect. So if we look at this again, notice how it opens from the center. And that's the 50% that animate out, right? Like it's exactly 50%, 100% in total. That's that. And then, I didn't know about this. This is the crucial bit. You can just add the keyword round and a value. And then it just applies these corner radii in the corner, just like that. And I was hoping that this would work. And it did, and I was so happy. You can animate this as well. So as you can see, like pay attention to the corners. They are rounded here, and in the end, they zoom out into regular corners, which is just so awesome. So, all right, 0%, the whole thing is closed and has a little bit of offset to top and bottom. At 50%, I'm reducing the offset to top and bottom because the mask mainly goes horizontal, but also it opens vertically just a little bit. I still have the same roundness. At 85%, we have exactly the same thing. This is my way of introducing this pause in the animation, right? So 50%, hold, rest of the animation. That's the 35% that we're waiting here for the same thing. So in keyframes, you can just copy the same line and it will figure out that you're not animating anywhere between these things. And then 100%, no roundness, no offset. The clip path is showing the entire stage. And that's it. That's the entire animation. And yeah, again, I was just super happy that it worked out like this. And that's it. That's all I wanted to show you for today. Maybe last piece, just in case you were wondering, the crossfading of these elements. Let me close this down just a little bit, remove the DevTools. So that the pieces of content that they crossfade like this, I wanted to make this work with just CSS, and I'm absolutely certain that it will, but you know, we are in React, so why not use it? This thing uses a tiny piece of state for the active index, and the only thing that I'm doing over here is that for every div, like for every element in this contents array, for every piece, I'm transitioning the opacity over 500 milliseconds, and then I'm just applying an opacity of 1 or 0 depending on the active index. And that's it. Stuff like that. I mean, if we are in the framework, let's also use it, right? Yeah, let me know if this was interesting to you. I was very happy when I coded this yesterday, and if you code CSS a lot, I mean, you know the feeling. Sometimes easy stuff becomes super hard, and sometimes super hard stuff becomes super easy, and we had one of these occasions today. Yeah. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have questions or anything else I can help with. I'm going to post all of the resources that I used in the comments. See you in the next one.